also support your local sound engineers because they work very diligent behind the scenes. And when you listen to stuff and there's crisp, beautiful sound and amazing editing, even of this show, and then sometimes guests, that comes from a brilliant mind and the brilliant talents of a sound engineer that's near and dear in my heart. And boy, that kid loves subwoofers.
Enjoy the podcast, everyone.
The Play Upstream Podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Play Upstream Podcast. I am Rob Shields.
And I am Cameron Tacey. Rob, what's going on? Well, for those of you who can't see, Rob's sighing deeply into his microphone, making guttural noises, and I'm just describing what you
Do you like
hear.
fish sticks, Cam? This isn't a joke from South Park, but do you eat fish sticks? Do you fish?
I liked fish sticks when I was younger. Not a big fish fan, though. I like the band, but
do you eat seafood?
I don't eat seafood.
Not at all?
No.
Oh my God, I like you so much more now.
Why?
Because I watched a documentary.
What one? What'd you watch? Was it about
Seaspiracy.
That's a cool name.
It's cool. Listen, I don't think you're taking it as serious as I am. See, you can't eat seafood anymore. Not you don't, but I'm saying generally, anyone who's listening to this, you can't do it. It's not even a joke.
It's been canceled.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't mean can't. Well, it should be. I watched this film. If you haven't watched this film on Netflix, I don't know. You might want to I'm saying you should see it, but you might want to plan it out. It's like getting a vaccination. Like I need to take the next day off of work. That's how serious it is. I watched it and I was blown away. And I've always been a seafood lover. I mean, I've honestly, to be fair, I've always really contemplated becoming a vegetarian and things like that. I don't know. It's my hill to die on. But Seaspiracy terrified me. It terrified me, Cam. And I don't mean to bring this podcast down with this information, but I think it's really important in part of my heart that the sea fishing is killing our planet, bro.
The whole planet.
Honestly, yeah. You got to watch the film.
This is big news you're breaking on the podcast.
It's because I got to bring, honestly, if we have a platform, all 11 people who listen to this show, now if I can convert those people and they convert two people each, and they also sell these amazing nutritional pills that I make in my garage, then all of us not only will save the planet, but each of us will become millionaires. So all I need is $1,000. But that sounds like
a win-win. And if then they get two people, that's at least 20 people by then.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know what this business plan is called, but all I know is that it works for
vitamin C Speary.
How one man took a documentary and made a fortune
in the vitamin industry.
And he also saved the planet because you shouldn't be eating seafood. No, I'm serious though. It's crazy. I actually am moved to not eat seafood anymore.
What if I catch my own food from the sea?
I don't know. Honestly, I think that any fish coming out of it now is like trouble. That's how bad it is. Yeah. No, for real. It's really jacked. I watched it.
Do they include lakes, levees, and rivers in that as well?
No.
They're strictly sea.
Yeah, it's like you got to watch it, but it's about all the things that the oceans do and the sea life that's in it, and we're overfishing, considerably, and then the implications of that are massive. That's why the coral reefs are dying. That's also why there's changes in our temperature and stuff because of all the things the actual marine life do in the sea. And what I learned was one of the that one of the biggest pollutants in the ocean is fishing nets.
Whoa.
Yeah, this was killing people.
You know what? I give you credit, actually. Yeah. I just remembered, this isn't your first awareness or dabble in sea life. There was that one time me and you had gone to Ralph's and there's those lovely people outside Ralph's asking us to sign a petition, and I usually just walk by them and I disregard them. But me and you let them give their 25-minute spiel. And then you said you couldn't sign, but you wanted to volunteer and help. And you proved to them that you could by giving them all their information back to them. So this isn't your first activism.
Yeah. Okay. Look, it was because I was like, there was a lonely time when I lived in Culver City, and I was trying to, like, they were cute, you know. And then I think there's moments in my life when I somehow, like, my ADD, like my chakra rings align, and it becomes hyper focused on a thing. I don't know if anybody else with like ADDs experienced that, where you just like you're in the Zen moment and you kind of are floating mentally around. And they told me this spiel about why all the sales pitch, and I said, I'm gonna memorize this right now. And then I was like, what if I can get 5? I don't want to pay you my money, I don't have any. But what if I can get you 5 people to do this right now? Is that the same contribution? They're like, no, I was like, why? Oh man, that was a good time.
That seems to be your solution every time for the sea life, is to, you're not going to pay anything, but you'll get 5 others that will recruit 5 more people.
Yeah, look, I don't understand what's wrong with it. You use the gifts that you're given, right? Like, I might not be the strongest person in the world, but I can convince someone to lift a box up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where you find your talent, and that's you know, as David Spade says in Tommy Boy, that man could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves, and that's what I've always attributed, you know, my skill set to sort of lean to, and it all, you know, and that's. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's worked for me so far. We have a really good podcast today. I'm excited about this one.
Me too.
What a segue, right?
Nice, smooth.
Oh, we're getting too comfortable now.
It's one of my favorite podcasts that we've had.
Yeah. I like, there are people I'm finding equal enjoyment with people that see, like, anyway, I got ahead of my own thought. I've had equal enjoyment with people that we don't know very well and people that we know really well. Yes. Larry is somebody that I know, I've worked with a lot, and like, we're at that position in time where like we're getting to know each other better, working on more things, collaborating on. It's hard. We have like a ton of people in our circles, right? So like, it's been really cool to get to know Larry better, and I just think his story is so great, and it's so accessible, and it's a very reflective of sort of like a lot of things that are happening right now, theatrically, socially, you know. And I just think it's just a person with a ton of work ethic and a really clear vision, and it's just, I always also like, I love surrounding myself with people who are self-starters, yes, and who motivate me to want to be really good at what I do. And
Larry does enough of that for like 5 people.
Yeah. And I think you'll hear at the start of it, he's like, we're recording a podcast, and outside his window, they're like rehearsing on a stage they built in their backyard. If that's any indication.
We're like, wait, what?
Yeah, we're like, he's like, oh, I just got done with rehearsal. Like, oh man, cool. And he's like, yeah, in my backyard, look. And he opened up his
There's people on a stage outside his window.
Yeah, that was really cool. But I also really like getting back. There's a certain joy I feel when I get to talk about theater with theater people, you know. And we
really geek out.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just the thing. Like, it's like if you talked about, like, you know, subwoofers or something with somebody, like, we'd be on there for hours, you know, talking about all that beeps and boops coming out of that SOB. But when we're talking about Cam's, you can't see Cam's face, but it's an angry grin. I don't know if you know that shape. That's the shape. He's not happy with it. I'm trying to identify with you with your sound technicianing.
I appreciate you trying to identify with me.
Oh man, I'm gonna get a talking to after this. Anyways, Larry's really great, and I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. I think the fun that Cam and I are having right now is because we had a really good time recording this one, and it was it's fun. We're very familiar, and I think you're going to actually get a lot out of this. A lot of theater talk, but there's some really good name drops. Like, if you want to look at some of the plays we talk about in this, are really, really fantastic pieces that are Something if you're getting into theater or you're interested in that, it's a really good place to start from.
And stay all the way because an amazing rapid fire.
Yeah, there's a
At the
lot
end.
better rapid fire.
It
It was
was-
really good.
It was an impressive rapid fire. So
Larry was pretty incredible with that. Also, check out our Instagram, Facebook, all of our jazz. We got some really great shows coming up. As always, we do a monthly lineup. You can check out when's it's coming out. We've been keeping consistent with this podcast and our new one, and sometimes guests, both of which you can check out on Spotify and a few other places that you can listen to those that are listed. Also, by this time, I believe we'll have a website out. We're working diligently on it. I know that we record this one. We will have recorded this one a while before it comes out, just because we're kind of getting ahead and feeling good about that. So the website will be up. Check us out there, support us, and also support a bunch of other artists. We talk about East West Players. We talk about Teatro Liberado in this one. And we're talking about like, we're not, we're inclusive. We want you to support as much art as you can and really build up that foundation. All right. We have our guest here with us today. One of my dear friends, the amazing, the incredible artist, the talented Larry Mayorquin. What's up, man?
welcome, Larry.
Thank you. What up, guys?
Oh, just living the dream, man. Just living the artistic dream. I'm surrounded by theater all the time. And from what we just heard from you, you're surrounded by theater all the time.
Quite literally.
So why don't you just to give some context, what's happening outside your window right now?
Sure. So there's actually a rehearsal going on right now in my backyard.
I love it.
I just got out of my call time was 5:30 to 6:30, so I just did that. But we're rehearsing for celebrating Shakespeare's birthday, presented by Muse of Fire and Teatro Liberado, which will pretty much explore Shakespeare from a queer and gender non-conforming lens. So we're looking at pieces like Twelfth Night, which super gay,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yes.
Like Orsino's in love with a dude who's really a girl who Olivia's also in love with, which is also a girl. So it's gay either way. Like
there's so many, and there's always that sort of situation, like a lot of the comedies where it's this gender swapping thing, but which is so interesting because that was born from all men playing all the roles. But now
Right.
it's become this really great platform for that, right? This gender nonconforming or people from the LGBTQ community, like, and I think that's awesome because I learned that from, I don't know if you're familiar with Lisa Volpe, who she came in and she was like known for a woman playing Shakespeare roles all the time, and playing them as playing a woman playing a man character. So she did Richard III that I was in. And then Michael Kachingwe played Queen Margaret in that. So this like 6'4" muscly black man played an old lady in it, like seriously. And it's just so, but that stuff's cool. Like, I think that changing these like archaic theatrical norms is what theater's all about, right?
Right. And then like you said, they were doing that when it was premiering. It was all men playing these roles. Really makes you wonder what was going on with Shakespeare at that time and like how he would identify too.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing we've been talking about is, would he be bisexual, pansexual? Would he consider himself male? So it's all just very interesting. And I think there's a lot of room for interpretation in all his work.
Sure. I mean, that's what's really interesting too, is because I don't know. I guess in my like heterosexual, white male mindset, I always just assumed like historically that being gay was like a new thing, right? In my like past my mind thoughts. And I think that's like a cultural thing that I think a lot. Like it's like, oh well, now everyone's getting liberal, like because of HBO or whatever and then like, but what's really happening is that all it was is that these people have been marginalized forever and pushed down, or it's been socially unacceptable. And then now people are feeling comfortable enough to open their mouths and do things that are interesting and celebrate themselves for the individuals that they are. So I wonder that too. Who knows? You know, but probably, you know, the fact that he was so easily able to write from those perspectives and have that fun in his plays. I hope so. That'd be dope.
Right. And you know, all his sonnets tell us that he for sure loved a man at some point. So
That's right.
sonnet 20, that's the gayest. Yeah, if you just need proof that Shakespeare wasn't straight, just go read sonnet 20 and
All right, we are for sure going after we're done with recording this. I'm gonna read that sonnet. We're gonna plug it in like right here. This one is the gayest sonnet. I love it, but it's true. I forgot about that.
some ominous background music, some candles lit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, some soft ASMR voice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so funny though that you know, and that's what I really appreciate about, you know, when we're taking on older works and we're looking at it through a new lens, I think is really great. Because for so long it's just been like, this is all it is, like white people doing this stuff, and then slowly but surely we've, you know, Shakespeare's kind of like borders wise, you know, that's one of the most published works in the history of the world, beyond like what the Bible, you know, as far as like reprinted things. And then now more people are feeling like having access to it and making it telling the stories they want through that medium, which is really cool. I think it's awesome. I'm really proud of you all for doing that.
Like you said, access to, and like that's definitely a big thing. I know that like when I was in school, I hadn't really experienced much Shakespeare, and being in class, I always felt like, am I dumb? Like I've always been proud of like English, you know, English is my strength. I love to write, I love to read, and I got into Shakespeare and it was so intimidating because I'd never seen anything like it before. But like you said, it's like historically, especially modernly, like performed by cis white people, and probably watched by cis white people also. The people in the audience. I know every time I've done a Shakespeare show, it's like, oh, look, there's my family. I can spot them right away. They're the brown people in the crowd, which is cool that, you know, they come and support. But it's been really cool to have Caitlin here too. That's one of the goals of the project, is having that access to everybody who wants to experience Shakespeare, and that it's not just for one type of person, you know?
Yeah. And I think that, you know, and I think I always wonder if there's like a line too, because I don't know how I feel about it, but there's a lot of sort of, you know, that gender swapping nature in the comedies, at least, and even somewhat like the jokes are interesting in some of the other places, like Romeo and Juliet. We did Romeo and Juliet together, right? And it's like the nurse talking about a young cockerel stone and all this stuff, and like, but there's some fun to be had with that, or I don't know, fun. I'm always like trying to trip up over what I'm trying to say because I don't want to be rude, but I think it's cool that like we can like the freedom to like perform those things and not make it poking fun at that, but like lifting it up as like, hey, like we're making this play happen, because there's a lot of these ill elements in it that I think are cool. Like, you know, that it's a different meaning too when it's not like two white dudes like running around slapping each other on the asses too, you know, unless that's what they want to do, because it's not making fun of it, it's making fun with it, I guess, maybe is what I'm trying to say. I don't know.
Yeah, and you can run around and slap each other's asses, and it might be a little gay. That's all I'm saying, you know.
I'm all about that. We've been at shows together, you know. that's all theater is, like you just run around slapping each other's asses. That's my favorite part of theater. Yeah. Anyways, we're going way far around the topic, but that's what's cool is I honestly, and this is what all I want to say about it, is that like I always thought like things were gay. Like that's how I was like brought up, like, it's gay. And then I went and did theater, and I realized that all I had done is just like label something that I don't understand, I didn't get. And in theater, it opened my eyes to meet so many different people from so many different walks of life that I realized how stupid I was and how small of a lens I had to look at. So like, All those, it's just a unique situation where, like, that's what I love about theaters is it opens a lot of doors for people to tell their stories. And if you're a good theater practitioner, right, or a good person who's a part of theaters, that you realize that it is just hearing all these stories and uplifting them and being like, look, it's not just my story. It's like there's a lot of people who have a lot of really interesting things to do, and maybe if we just listen and shut the f up once in a while, we might learn a thing or two. Anyways, Larry Mayorquin, this is why we're here.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. But this was great. It's because, like, we can talk to Larry about this stuff, because we talk, like, Larry and I have talked for like hours, just like on Zoom, just chilling, talking about things. But the focus is on you. So we'll bring it all around to the famous Play Upstream podcast question, which is, what's your story? What got you into art? What made you who you are as an artist? What kind of like started out the Larry Mayorquin story?
Yeah. Well, I would say it started in freshman year of high school. How when you go to high school, you have to pick your classes for the first time, and you're meeting with your new counselor, and they're like, well, tell me about you. And you're like, I don't know, man, I'm 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on a whim, I just chose to take Drama 1 as my elective, because they push the A through G's and you have to get your art requirement. And I was like, okay, art makes me nervous. Making myself vulnerable makes me nervous. Let me just get that out of the way as soon as possible. So I did Drama 1, and it was awful. It was honestly the worst thing ever. Not because of the class. The class was great, but I was just so shy and so introverted. And I remember like sitting in, like, I sat down in class, and the girl next to me was involved in the department already, but hadn't taken the class. So she was starting from Drama 1, and she was like, yeah, I talked to my agent, and they're going to send me out to this modeling thing, and I don't really want to do it, whatever. And then, like, to my right is like football players 10 times my size, because again, I'm 12 and they're seniors. And I was just terrified. And we went through monologues and scenes, and I had one other friend who was equally terrified in the class. And we kind of spent that whole year basically like, oh, this is dumb. Like, I can't wait to be done and get this out of the way. But like secretly inside, I hate sucking at things. Yeah. So I just tried so hard to not suck that by the end of the class, I was like, this is actually kind of interesting, kind of like something I never thought that I could do or had considered or had really been presented to me. I'd never seen a play before. So it was all new to me. And then came like the following year when we had to sign up for classes again. And I was like, all right, what the hell? Like, put me in advanced drama. Let's do it. And then we had auditions coming up. And the first time I was ever on stage was really third grade. We did Willy Wonka and I played Mr. Salt. Nice. There's a little 8-year-old in a suit. And then my sophomore year, we did Sound of Music in high school, and I had no lines. My role was neighbor. And
you just wave.
Yeah, no, literally. Yeah, it was neighbor / Nazi. So my brown self was playing a Nazi. And we had like no lines. And I remember coming out and being literally shaking and sweating and like thinking like, oh, this is not the same as class. Like, it's dark and there's lights and people are watching me. But it became kind of addicting. It's like this adrenaline rush. And I think when it really solidified, though, is probably my junior year of high school when we did Laramie Project, which I think most of us have had the pleasure of reading or watching at some point. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't, definitely give it a read. And it was the first time that I had read a play that was about real life, that it was so relatable. Like I know the Von Trapps are kind of based on real life, but like
it's not Larry Project, that's for sure. No,
right? It's not the same. And I just remember feeling very connected to that text and thinking like I didn't know that theater could do this, and
Mhm.
that theater could be used to educate people about things that are important. Um, I thought it was kind of dress up, and though I liked it to that point, I wasn't really passionate about it until I realized that it had such power and strength. Um, and then, standing in front of your classmates and saying lines like, if I don't tell you I'm a fag, then you won't beat the shit out of me. Like, that was a really hard line for me to get through. And I'm really grateful that that was presented to me when I was only like 16. Um, so then from there, I was like, oh, I think this is something that I really actually love, and that I want to learn how to write something like this. And I never really thought about college before. I'm the first in my family to like graduate high school.
Okay.
So I was like, that was already the accomplishment. That was the milestone that I was looking forward to. I was like, finish high school, be 18, be an adult, and then life starts. But literally after doing the Laramie project, I started applying to colleges because I just wanted, I'm from Victorville. If you don't know where that is, it's on the way to Vegas where you stop for gas.
It's like great.
And it smells like meth and butthole, so don't go there unless you need gas.
Yeah, Victorville's an interesting place, that's for sure.
And like it was either apply to college or figure it out in Victorville, and it was not going to be Victorville. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I got into Cal Poly, and that's where I met Rob at some point. And
Did you think at any point from freshman meeting with the counselor and just randomly picking a drama class to 4 years later, you're now like deciding to go to college for it and, leave home? Did you ever think about that at all? Did you think that's where that would lead?
I would have never, ever in a million years guessed. Because college was something that they kind of pushed on us in high school, but I always just figured like I'll go to a community college and then you'll see. But I definitely didn't have any long-term plans when I was a teenager.
Yeah. It's crazy like that. I think about that all the time. I was like, yeah, I guess college. I don't know. Like there was no, I feel like now, like when I'm with my students, I'm like, you gotta go, like get out of this state, like go to New York, go wherever, like go to the best school in the country. Like it's good for you. When I was a kid, they're like, yeah, I guess Cal Poly's pretty cool. It's like down the street, And I'm like, what the hell? And it's so interesting because I never thought beyond that. Like I just watched my stepbrothers and like people hang out and there was just like, yeah, get a girlfriend or something, like that was like the coolest, like, hey, you get a job, get a family. And I had no clue what I wanted to do. And the very similar to you, theater just sort of like implanted a seed, right? Where I was like, God, I love this. It might be because I absolutely need constant attention 24/7 from everyone I know. That might have been a bit of it, but also, I think that taking other people's words and bringing them to life is just so interesting. And especially when like you got to do Laramie Project in high school and have it mean something so, keenly to like what you want, like you couldn't, it gave you the voice to say it because it wasn't your words, maybe, I don't know what that is, like the meaning, but the words. That's you always try to personify why theater is so important. As they talk about it dying, right? Like it's gonna die. We can watch Falcon and Winter Soldier on Disney Plus in my home. It's like, why do I go to the theater? But it's that. You can't, I don't think you can watch a movie and feel someone's like heartbeat on stage, and when you do that and when you have that thing that happens, it changes you. I really believe that. And I think that's why theater will never leave, because there's like books, right? Books, you read a book and your brain is processing the images and making it up. Then there's movies and it's like you're watching an image over here. And then like theater is the juxtaposition of those two things where it's like talking to you right in front of you, but giving you the pictures. It's very interesting. And I think it's amazing that you got to experience that.
Right. And like you said, I got to experience the Laramie Project so young. I know that so many schools would never, ever produce the Laramie Project. And my theater teacher was an amazing advocate for challenging works. I know the year before I started, they did Columbinus, which was also a documentary piece about the shootings that happened in Columbine. And her name's Jennifer Nocera from Victor Valley High School, and she advocates for her students so hard for such an underprivileged area. She took them to Scotland, to the Edinburgh Festival. She let me come back and assistant direct, and like has given me countless opportunities, though, you know, our school could care less, you know, budget cuts, and the theater is usually self-funded. So, but yeah, it was a privilege for sure to get to know the Laramie Project so young.
And all it takes is a few good teachers. I really believe that, right? In somebody's life, like somebody who really gives a shit about you. And it's that's what's and it could be anything, theater or whatever, but I think a lot of people who talk about their success or their sort of feeling like they belong comes from that mentor, that person who, like, it helps that teachers are paid to care. You know what I mean? Like that helps, but there's also people that go above and beyond, because we always talk about it like there are teachers that hate kids, and it's like, you got in the wrong profession. Like, what are you doing? Like, you inherently hate these children. But then there's other people who can, and advocating for pieces like that is huge, because and kudos to like the school too, because I bet she got a lot of backing from like the principal and things like that too, because for those people, I mean, we always talk like everyone knows these shows, but Laramie Project is the story of Matthew Shepard in Laramie, Wyoming, and he was murdered for being gay, and it made national news. And a theater company called Tectonic Theater, is Tectonic Theater Company? Is that the whole name? Tectonic Theater Project. Sorry. They made a documentary theater piece where they interviewed people, and they went there for like a year and interviewed as these things were happening in real time. And that's like the most famous documentary theater piece that there is, I think. Am I wrong? I think that's true, right?
I would say it is. Yeah, you know, Anna Devere Smith is up there with Twilight Los Angeles.
That's true. That's fair.
But those two, I would say probably, yeah, those are the most famous of that kind.
And the first time you're exposed to that kind of work is really kind of powerful and insane, right? That we have this sort of like, it's real people talking. And I think it changes the scope of that, because it's nonfiction, right? And it's so crazy. And like, yeah, sorry, we can go on for a tangent on we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Let's keep this. I want to keep the Larry Mayorquin story going strong here, because we're going to talk. We know we're going to talk about moment work and all that documentary theater later, because we're working on stuff with that now, and I want to talk about that. But let's get back to Larry Mayorquin's story. Where were we? We were
leaving high school. You're deciding to go to college. What were your expectations and goals going to college for this?
I think I was very, very naive at that time, and I didn't really have expectations. I didn't know the industry at all. All I knew was that we got together in room 2 to rehearse after school for 2 hours every day, and that was like the time that I felt the best. And I guess I was kind of expecting that sentiment to carry over. And in a way, it really did. But also in a way, you know, you get such a rude awakening when you go into the entertainment industry. Education, like,
oh yeah.
Have you thought about an agent? Do you want to? I went in as a tech major, actually, because
what?
I went in as, I think it was technical design was the option at that time.
What a safe choice, Larry Mayorquin.
I'm like, I should have stuck with it.
Yeah, you might be making some money.
And I remember, Rob probably remembers, but we would have the all department meetings.
Yeah.
And I met Catherine Campbell, sweetheart, my first day in the department. And she was like, do you want to stage manage, or do you want a lighting design, or do you want a prop design, or do you want to, like, on and on and on? And I was like, yes.
And the thing is, if you don't know Catherine Campbell, I want everyone who's listening just to picture like the purest, nicest individual in your mind, right? Like someone who comes up to you and you just go like, I trust you. Like, I just feel like she's the most genuine and nice human being in the entire world. Yeah. Cal Poly's an interesting place too, because it had a really strong pedigree for technical theater for a long time, because the former what do you call it, head of the head of the theater department or whatever, Bill Morse, was like the technical theater guy, and people got brought in from like to Disney from there all the time. So it used to be huge, and us actors were like small potatoes when I went in. They were like, "Yeah, just get on stage and shut up. We're doing tech," you know. It's so crazy. That's awesome. So what happened after that?
I took Tech 1 and realized that power tools scare the shit out of me. Actually, we were on the quarter system still, and my first quarter was garbage. My GPA was like below a 2.0. And when I left high school, I had a 3.6 GPA or something. So I had never, ever failed a class before. And then suddenly I was taking trig because no one told me I didn't have to.
God, yeah.
And I got a D in that. And then I was taking acting 1, and we had started doing lip syncs. And I was just like, what even is my life right now? And on top of that, I'd never been away from home. My mom was very traditional, so she did not like me sleeping over anywhere. And so I moved into the dorms, and I was still pretty shy, I would say. And my roommate never showed up, which I didn't know that was going to be a good thing over time, but I had this whole dorm to myself. So I basically didn't talk to anybody. For a couple weeks. I would say I said very few words for a couple weeks. And then I lost my wallet as like my first week there with my ID card, so I couldn't get into the dining hall, and it was a mess. And I was like, classes were hard. And I remember at the end of that year, I went into Julian's office just to pretty much be like, this is not a good representation of who I am. Like, I know that my grades are not reflecting like the work ethic that I wish they did, but I just wanted to like let you know that this is so overwhelming. Like, the first to graduate high school, the first to do all these things, and like there's all this pressure, and this is so much harder than I thought it would be. And he was pretty supportive. And the main thing he said to me that stuck with me for the next year was, your actions are going to speak louder than anything you're telling me right now. Not that I don't believe in you, but like, let's see you show up. And I was like, you know what, that's fair. Like, it might not be what I wanted to hear at that very moment, but it's probably what I needed to hear to light a fire under my ass. And then we came back our sophomore year, and we don't have a musical theater department at Cal Poly. And they are always saying like, if you want to do musicals, do it yourself.
Such an interesting animal, Cal Poly.
Yeah, it is. And a few of us decided like, well, fuck it. Yeah, let's do it. And we chartered a club called ACT, which is still active, which stands for Actors Collaborating with Technicians. Because also at that time, we were kind of heavily divided in the department, where the techies and the actors weren't really getting along.
Oh, that's interesting.
Bro, we could go into the politics of Cal Poly for like
we don't have
hours. Because, but it's like any institution, right? There was this... good relationships have to be fostered by leadership, right? Especially when it's divided between two different sections of people. And technical people and actors are, in a lot of places, are like this, right? They're butting head. What you don't see is my fists are banging together. I guess I can't do any visual things on a podcast. The conventions.
Did you feel, was that a big help creating ACT?
Totally. Because we had a lot of people who were acting options that for one reason or another, they weren't getting an opportunity to play those lead roles. And like, we'd hear them sing in the hallway and be like, bro, what the hell? Like you can belt your face off, So we ended up putting together a production of Spamalot.
I was almost in
love
that.
that.
I almost auditioned for that.
I almost was in that as well. I was not. I was the secretary for the club at that time when we first chartered it. And that was directed by Jeff Keane.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff Keane.
Yeah, I love Jeff Keane. And it was good. It was a great production. And the things that we had yet to learn were really like the budgeting and the production managing and scheduling out of production, which are, valuable things you really honestly don't learn in class. You don't really learn how to produce if you're an acting option, you learn how to act. And as we know now, you need to know how to do both if you want to be seen.
Yeah.
So that was successful. And then what was pretty cool too is that the school, if you start a club, they give you like money. You just have to charter a club. So they gave us $700, which you can't do a show with, but it's a start.
Yeah.
So we did that. I think the show ended up losing money because again, we didn't know how to budget.
Sure.
But when we renewed our charter, since we were a second year club, they gave us $1,000. So we were able to.
And that's from Cal Poly proper, right? Not from the theater department specifically?
Right. It's from ASI and OS, Office of Cultural Life Centers, something like that. And from class council.
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave us $1,000. I was planning to come back and be the vice president. And when I showed up to the first day of school, the president texted me that she had to drop out. So the club was pretty much just out there, and we had missed a few deadlines apparently. So I like rush over to the office and I'm like, no, we're still here. We need this money. Like, can I just do the recharter right now? I'll be the president. With really nothing else, like I didn't have anything lined up or any ideas or anything. I knew that it was important that first time that we got to do it. Luckily at that year is when Caitlin Tice joined Cal Poly, who she's directed like 37 musicals or something. So we did Urinetown that year, and that was very successful. And then by our senior year, our last year there, we did Spring Awakening, and we were able to, for the first time, take a show on tour. So we went to the Mysterium Theater in La Habra, which is an abandoned train station, which was dope. So the dressing rooms are in an abandoned train, which is super fucking.
Wait, I'm sorry, where is this?
Mysterium in La Habra.
That's dope.
It's a really cool space. And it's hella haunted. Like
what?
I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Did you see stuff?
Well, like the door, there's this room in the back that has like a sign on it that says, like, I'm sure somebody put it there, but like, do not open, Sally lives here or something, and that door would just open itself. So
okay, let me tell you something right now. Like, anytime that we have an opportunity to get into a random ghost story, I will take that bait at all times, because this is what happens to me every time I hear a ghost story. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna really be vulnerable right now. Is my eyes start tearing up and I get really I swear to God, I freak out.
Have you seen a ghost?
Oh, Rob? Yes, one time. Or I never see it, but I experienced it. I experienced a ghost, and I was actually like, hearing people's stories freaked me out more than experiencing that. Like, every time I hear somebody's ghost, I don't know why we're talking about this, but why we're here. It's like my eyes tear up, I start crying, like, just because out of I don't know why I get so scared of ghost stories. But yes, I was in a theater and I was on a ladder pulling things down, and it was in my school, and I heard a door open and close, and I went to go check it out, and no one was in the building. And then I heard something run and open another door, and I went and ran out and looked out, and there was nothing in an open field. And I know freaked me out. And I was like, wow, that's the first time something's happened that I couldn't explain. But my goodness, that's such a cool theater. Wait, there's a door that says Sally lives here, and it opens and closes?
Yeah, bro. And it really does. people have so many stories in that space.
I've got to go to this space. This sounds so cool. So are they still, so did you rent it out?
Yeah, so Caitlin knew the lady who ran the theater at the time. And so we basically signed a contract with them to do like a profit share at the box office in exchange for like not paying upfront to rent the theater.
Yeah.
They probably needed people in there. It was haunted.
A lot of theaters are, though.
That's
you
true.
know, yeah.
That's true.
The theater ghost. Every theater has one, I believe. So
yeah, that's it's so weird that's like. I wonder why that is. But I don't know. There's got to be something. But there's a lot of theater. There's one at the Covina Center. They say, and all these places that we performed in this area, there's like the ghost stories involving theaters. It's so crazy. So Urinetown was in La Habra?
Urinetown was at Cal Poly, and then Spring Awakening.
Spring Awakening.
Yeah, we opened it at Cal Poly, and then we toured it there.
Yeah, I hit up Caitlin too late. She hit me up to do it at the school. Spring Awakening, but like during that time it was one of those times where like we had so many things going on that it was one of those emails that was like, I don't know the answer to this right now, and like I got back to it like a month and a half later. Yeah. But Caitlin Tice is awesome. I think when I first met Caitlin Tice, I was like, who are you? Which I do sometimes, where I'm like, Cal Poly's my thing, and then I get all like the cackles on my neck go up, and then I'm just like, why don't I just shut up and listen sometimes? Anyways, yeah, ACT's great. So are you still a part of ACT?
Not anymore. I came back and assistant directed Heathers the year after I graduated.
Yeah.
And from my knowledge, the club that started with $700 is like now pretty close to 10 grand. So that's really exciting for them. When we left it with 7,000, which was like 10 times more than we started with in 3 years. So we were very excited for that. And, it was such a great opportunity for everyone because I didn't know how to production manage. I just like, fuck it, let's go for it,
Yeah.
And like, it gives you a reason to ask the questions you don't know you need answers to.
Yeah, that's something you have to learn, right? Like you were saying, they don't teach you that. And I'm not saying that that's there's only so many things, and I think a lot of what theater education is just like all education right now, where it's kind of like it's set in a very archaic system that was developed a long time ago. Like, these are the things that we teach. And then now we're learning from like all these like super, these people who basically have to wear many hats in this industry. Like I always talk about Daveed Diggs, right? He's like, singer, actor, musician, all of these different hats that you have to wear. And like our educational system for theater is based on like, here's learn Stanislavski. And that's like it, not to say that like, I think that our professors at Cal Poly were great in all of their unique ways, right? Like I still talk to most of them, and they've been big parts of my life, and I really appreciate that. But also like I do believe that there's some room to grow in the aspect of acting's one thing. How do we awaken the artist in people, right? And I really feel that the challenge is, and like you figured this out, Larry. I know from working with you, like you are molding who Larry Mayorquin is an artist, right? Like and what I love is as we'll get to it in a minute, but like it started with Larry Project, and it's where it develops is really interesting for you. But like figuring out who an artist is, and I wish our school system was better at cultivating that. Because that's your point of view, and that's your voice, and that's what makes you so unique. And your story is so interesting. Honestly, like my story is the straight version of the Larry Mayorquin story. Like I swear to God, because no, for real, because like I did the same thing. Like I went to Cal Poly on a whim. I got into theater in high school. I didn't know. I kind of walked in, and I was like, and I figured out a different way. That's why it's so interesting. That's why I was like shaking my head, nodding, like, yeah, like I get it. And then you find your own path. So like, what led to that development for you for like starting to really take ownership of your art?
I think for a lot of people, we don't necessarily have a choice. Like we don't really fit into a lot of spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like oh, I can just get up and audition for this, and I'm exactly what they're looking for.
Right.
And in a lot of ways too, I've learned that a lot of those spaces aren't really spaces that I want to be in anyway. But I think it was really more of like I have to. So I think that the main way that I was able to do that was after college for sure, with Teatro. So in November 2018, I graduated June 2018 from Cal Poly. I was on backstage. I still am, but I just remember, I don't know if you get these emails every morning, but it's like 148 new roles, perfect
Oh
for
my
you.
God. When you get out of, we could talk for an hour about like what happens to an actor when you get out of college. Cause I talk about it all the time where it's like, you're like, I'm big old, like I saw Larry in Little Women. Was that it? No, what was it? What was the one where you played the guy? What was that?
Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice, excuse me. And you like I watched Larry and I was like, who's this guy? Like he's the son of a bitch. He's funny. Like I was like, I always get again my cackles like when anyone's doing it. And I watched it and I was like, this guy is so talented, you know? And then you go and you're the big fish, right? Like people like you, you've made a community, you've gone 4 years, you started out as a freshman, just like in high school, you leave there and you're like, I am the drama president or whatever the hell. And then you get out there and no one gives a shit.
Right.
And you end up going on backstage and you get 180 emails and like 3 of them fit you and like 1 calls a month. And you're like, what am I doing? You know?
So
3
sorry,
if you're lucky.
Start over. You're getting all these emails and then you created, what was the name of it?
Teatro Liberado. Basically because I would open these emails every day and backstage would be like 30-year-old white 6-foot male, and I'm like, bro, what? Did you read my description? No, I don't think so. And I kind of noticed that a lot of the people I graduated with were kind of going through that as well, where they're realizing that like I was able to play these parts in college because my professors allowed it, but yeah. I'm not going to get cast. I don't think I'll ever get cast as Mr. Collins again because it's in England and I'm brown as fuck.
Yep.
And you know, that's cool. It's fine. So Teatro, I had this idea in my head for a while. I love my mom, like with all my heart. She came to the US in the 90s and basically left her life behind in Mexico that she loved dearly for us. And I would listen to her and her friends, her comadres, talking. My mom worked double shifts, so only Friday nights or Saturday nights her friends would come over, and it was one of the few times I would actually get to see my mom. So I would insist that I'd be up there like 2 a.m. listening to the Chisme, and that's how I became a chismosa. It was so inspiring to hear how all these women had left so much behind for their kids and to see where their kids were. And I had the feeling that, you know, that was the case for a lot of my friends who I graduated with. So I sent out a bunch of texts, emails, basically like, hey, I want to interview my mom about her story about immigrating to the US and how it was before, how the journey was, how it was after. Would that be something that you're interested in doing too with your family, your mother, even like a chosen family mother? Because, you know, for a lot of queer people, we don't have relationships with our parents, and I didn't want that to be a barrier for anyone. And luckily, most of the people I reached out to were like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And initially we just got together to do that project, and we got to interview our moms, which I would suggest anybody who has a chance, like even if you don't think your parents have stories to tell you, we have
Rob
the
and I have been having tons of discussions about this recently. It's crazy.
Yeah, like we have the privilege now of all this technology, and we can record our parents' stories, if not for a play, for our kids, for future generations to know what happened in this time. So it was so much more than we ever thought it was. We thought it was just going to be the stories that we had heard before, and in a way they were, but when you put them next to each other, it develops a more deep connection to your culture. And it was just so interesting. There are so many things about my mom that I thought I knew. I thought I knew everything about my mom.
It makes your parents, it makes them a real person and not just your mom.
Exactly.
You know, they lived a whole life before us.
Yes. And even a whole life while we're around that we don't even really know about what's going on with them. So we got to premiere that at Second Stage Series for SCSF. And that was awesome. We had to turn some people away the second night because it was packed, which was a blessing. But yeah. So that was about our moms and
Caminos. Larry, I was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And let me tell you, like, and that's not like blowing smoke up your ass, right? I needed to say that, but it just felt like it just rolled up. But again, and I've decided to change this part of my life where I think a lot of what happens is we're programmed to get very combative about people who are doing good things. Like it's like I hate the success of others, right? And I've changed my mindset on that when I learned, I read a book by Austin Kleon that said if you, or there was a quote in it, I'm not sure if he came up with it, but it was like you have to be interested to be interesting, right? And I felt a lot of times that what we do in acting is we go like, well, we're the cool people and we don't do these things. And I realized that what I was just being was an asshole. Right. And that like, and when I saw Caminos, the first thing I thought was like, second stage, like, why am I staying here? Blah, blah, blah. Right. Like I liked you, but I didn't care. Right. Just because that was my mindset. And I saw Caminos and I was so moved by that piece because of what you said. And I think for me, that was the moment that tied everything together. Because at the same time I was working in, or I got done working in a restaurant for times that I admit some, like I always talk about how I was racist, right? A long time ago against people from Mexico or Latinos, because I was grew up in Chino and everybody was like, oh, illegal immigrants, blah, 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 which was the talking point for everything while you're having a Bud Light on the porch. And I work with people and I realize that like, we just have no friggin' idea of what they're human beings who are just trying to live a life. And then I watched Caminos and I listened to those stories of these people trying to get to a place where they're just trying to find a better life. And I was so moved because I was like, imagine, which is the empathy, right? Like how terrifying it is and what they went through. And you put that in such a beautiful way, like your whole group. And I saw you in your like suit jacket running your what's it called, the sound
yeah
yeah, you were on the soundboard on your laptop and like you had a speaker and we're talking and I was like, that's when I saw you and I was like, you know what, I think the world of Larry Mayorquin, like that guy like had a vision and did it. And that story, like I will always be interested in hearing that story because Caminos was such a beautiful piece. And I think a lot of people need to see that play. And I know that you had some success with it with a few theater companies. And I hope that once COVID goes down, that you can ride that into some more stuff, because I think that that's a story that people need to hear, especially now, you know, and I'm really proud of you for that. That was a beautiful piece.
Thank you. And it was very, 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 very collaborative. And it was kind of a process of breaking down how you said we enter those spaces is like, oh, we're so cool. We're just playing a part. And, you know, as corny as it could sound, but like creating that safe space where people, we can approach theater differently. Now we're so used to, we get a script and we have 4 weeks to put it together, you know? We're not used to, hey, let's spend a year together and mess around. There were times in rehearsal where we just brought in lighting, well, you know, from moment work, Rob, like we would just bring in like, I brought in a flashlight, I brought in a lantern, I brought my phone, and see what kind of theater came from that related to our interviews. Or we would pick out two lines from our interviews and create a whole moment based off of that. And the group became so close and so trusting of each other. And I think that that's why the story became what it was. There was no ego involved. When people suggested edits, we knew that it was from the bottom of their heart, they had the best interest of the piece in mind, and the writers were never offended.
Yeah.
So it was a really awesome process, and I'm so thankful to everyone who agreed to show up to my house where I had like 6 mismatched chairs and was like, "We're gonna do a play." I don't have any script or any props or anything, but we'll see how it goes.
Was that the first piece that you created on your
own? I think it was the 3rd play that I wrote, but it was the first work that I was able to write and then direct and produce and tour and all that.
How did that change you from seeing a project from inception to the culminating piece that you were able to put up there?
I like the jitters before you go on stage as an actor. Nothing compared to like when your words are being read out loud to a crowd of people, where your directing is being criticized and where you actually have no control of what's going on stage anymore. And you just trust your ensemble to bring the story to life the way they did in rehearsal. It was terrifying, but it's so rewarding. I don't think there's anything like it, man. I really don't. To just hear an idea in your head, and like, I think you know this too, Rob, like, the more you listen to interviews, the less impact they have on you over time.
Yeah.
And you start to wonder, like, man, is this even dramatic? Like, is this even important?
It's the same with comedy, right? Where like I did like a big comedy and we did it so much with like the same audience. They're like, is this even funny? Like, and then you do it for an audience, you're like, oh my God. And and it's the same. I think it's very it's challenging in a lot of ways with all plays of there's that time you reach to where you're like, oh, okay, we need an audience. It's time. There's only so much rehearsal you can do with it. That's why it's just so interesting, right? Is like people were like, well, how much rehearsal should we do? And I was like, well, no more. Like 6 weeks is kind of the cap for me. Like, I feel like you go beyond that and now you're going to lose some stuff. You're going to lose some of that fire. It's just an interesting process. But how did Caminos finishing that develop you as an artist?
I think it for sure has given me the confidence to make more work that reflects my views and that I can cast people that I love in. And it's just like Teatro Liberado translates to liberated theater, and it really has been liberating to know that there's no like, just because I don't see a role for me doesn't mean I can't make one.
Yeah.
And just because I don't see roles for my friends doesn't mean I can't cast them in something that's in my head, or that I can't write a play about my friends' experiences, because they're all important. And I think as an artist, what has been the most impactful is that I want to tell true stories as much as I love the fictional theater world. There's something about, hey man, this happened and you need to hear it, that is so impactful for the artist and for the audience. I really encourage anyone who's never listened to a documentary theater piece to give it a go. It's really different.
Yeah, definitely. And we're the coolest part is like the one thing too is I've had the fortune of collaborating with Larry on a piece that we've been working on for a long time, which would probably be tightened up more if I wasn't so pulled into 1,000 directions, which I appreciate Larry's patience every day. But we're working on a moment work piece, a documentary theater piece where we interviewed all of the people. We interviewed people in Pomona during COVID, which was like, I just kind of farted out this idea because I didn't know what to do when theater was over. And it was super awesome because I knew that Larry had done Caminos, and I hit up Larry and I was just like, yo, do you have any pointers? And then Larry like gave me this whole laundry list of things. I was like, God, this is awesome. Well, Larry and I originally worked in Romeo and Juliet. I cast him as Mercutio when I directed that. And like Larry was the freaking funniest Mercutio. I everything that I asked Larry to do, Larry just went with. And there was always that moment where I looked in Larry's eyes and he was like, all right, like you want me to do that, and then you kill it. And then so I always had an immense amount of respect for Larry. And then we did this piece, and I asked him about doing documentary theater with my kids, and thank God for Larry, because I would have drowned, because Larry came in the most professional. Here's questions that I would do, here's all this stuff, and I was like, what if you collaborated together and we worked on this? And then we've been working on that for 9 months now. We made a baby. And then I've just been, whatever the product is for that, I think the process for me has been just wonderful working with you, because it's been like, I really think the world of you. And I think that you are very clear on the stories that you want to tell. And I really hope, and I know you will, is just continue to create, because you got it going on. And I love the stories that you've created so far. And I think that just your passion for things is infectious. And I think that's really a wonderful and defining quality of you. As much as I know you're an introvert, which is fun, because it's like I work with you and I'm like, does Larry hate me? And then I go like, nah, Larry just sometimes is thinking, like, let him do his thing, like,
I get that a lot.
Yep.
People think I hate them so often. I rarely ever hate people. Not never, but really.
On that, like hearing you talk about how nervous you get about all these things, and then how much you kind of push yourself to get into it, and hear how highly Rob speaks of all the things you've done. What would you tell other people and younger people in your shoes that, why should they create art or take a leap and push through those nerves?
Interestingly, my roommate actually said something recently, because we both talk about how we are anxious people. A lot of the time that we exist, we're anxious. And then you think about, like, there's a difference between being anxious and not doing things because you're anxious. So I would just say don't let it be a barrier, because the things that we're usually anxious about are like, am I good enough? Am I going to get this done before this age? And honestly, no one's looking at you that hard.
Yeah.
It's great advice.
So I would say, like, it's totally fine to be anxious, but it's not okay to let your anxiety stop you from doing things you care about.
Yeah, totally. I work with another person, Kevin Gassio. You'll all probably meet him at some point. He's a really great guy. He does musical theater and things like that. And we talk about that a lot. He's like, what the struggle is right now is it's this hard line of being accepting of what students are going through and being more open about what they're telling you, and also being like, okay, like, well, you still got to do it. And he said something really interesting about, like, oh, well, all these people have TikTok now. Oh God, I just felt like it's like 100 years old. They have the TikTok, but they have TikTok now. And those god darned kids. They have TikTok now, and there's like 30-second things that are explaining these, anxiety and making more accessible and stuff. And then it's like, yeah, well, the thing is, you can't just go, I have anxiety and I can't do this. Right? It needs to be like, I have anxiety and I'm telling you what's going on with me, but I'm still trying to work those things out and push through. And I think, and that I have anxiety, right? Like, I think a lot of people in our generation are now starting to identify what that is, where it's just pure, whatever it is, panic, terror, what all those things, like, it's challenging. And there's nothing wrong with people feeling that way, and they need to be, accepted and comforted. But they also need to be, we also need to inspire. And I think stories like yours, Larry, of like, hey, like, I'm this person, like, I always tell people you have to create something, do something, be involved in something, and see it to its fruition. And I tell it to like my freshman kids all the time, or like people, like, just go and do it, because who you're going to be at the end of that process is a completely different human being. From that first show that you did, pushing yourself, to all of us, going and trying something that's the most terrifying thing in the world. And then when you're done with it, you're a new person because you did it, and I think that, yeah, like I said, and you went out and you made a theater company, and you worked on these things, and now you're writing your stuff, and you went and trained at Tectonic's like moment work like thing to go and make the things, and it all comes full circle. And I just think that that's what I like to surround myself with, is people who are successful. And success to me isn't like I was on this, or I have an agent, or I do all that stuff. Success to me are people who see a vision and see it to fruition, right? And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think we need to surround ourselves with more people like that, especially in this industry where I'm like you, man. It might be fear, might be anxiety. I talk about this a lot. Like, I wish that I had more motivation to go out and audition. Maybe I'm a coward. I don't know. But what I do love is collaborating and working with people and creating art. And I know when that feels right. And I can tell you, when I worked in Romeo and Juliet with you, I thought that was perfect. When I worked at Titus Andronicus with you, I was like, this guy's dope. Like, I wish it was a bigger role, but whatever. But like, and then I work on this moment work thing, and I'm just like, I finally got into like a random motorcycle, and I've gotten to know you, and I'm like, all I see is work ethic and vision, and you have no problem just telling me like, nah, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm like, okay, thanks. Like, I like that collaborating.
And I think collaborating is a good way to get past your anxiety too, because you don't have to do things like, if auditioning makes you nervous and you feel more comfortable in writing, but you love acting, find somebody who you vibe with really well. For me, it's Yane, and we check in, we do writer check-ins, we do theater check-ins, and we set goals, and we get organized, and we make lists and set deadlines. And the more lists you have, it can be anxiety inducing, but also if you can see your vision on a production calendar, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, an accountability buddy, right? But I think that because I think that the business also, like I was talking about before, is like, you feel like you've got to be the top dog and you can't collaborate with people, and then you find that how you build things. That's why Play Upstream has been such a passion project for me. And soon I will be pandering to Larry Mayorquin, because I want to be involved in more Larry Mayorquin things. But I think that what it did for me is it gave me a community of people that I really enjoyed working with, and it motivated me to actually do the things I put my money where my mouth is. Yeah. And accountability from friends is so important.
They're so much nicer to you than you'll ever be to yourself.
Oh my God, that's so true. We'll get off of this, and all I'll do is talk shit to myself for an hour about like, you could have said this better. And it's like, what are we doing? So much of our stupid lives is spent just beating ourselves down. And our friends like, that's great. What's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. And if it wasn't great, then you can set a new goal, and your friend can hold you accountable to that.
Yeah,
it's fine. They're still going to be nicer.
That's my favorite.
It's great.
That's the quote right there. I love it. All right. Okay. We've reached that point. Let's go into it. Larry, I alluded to this before, that this would happen to you. A rapid fire session of questions that we always end this. This is a very stressful time for a lot of people, because we get comfortable, you get relaxed, you don't think there's any predators waiting in the brush, but then we come to rapid fire questions and it's all adrenaline. So here we go. Are you ready? Are you prepared? Are you prepared emotionally?
Not emotionally, but
okay. All right, here we go. Rapid fire question number 1. What is an album or a musician that you're currently listening to?
For research, and Juliet is a jukebox musical that just premiered in London last year. That is about Romeo and Juliet, but told through modern pop music. So,
ooh, that's cool. I haven't heard of that. Now that's something new. All right. Rapid. If I don't go through these really quick, Cam, yell at me and tell me it's not rapid fire. So here we go. All right. So, what's a book you're currently reading?
What's around me? I'm rereading A Piece of My Heart right now, which is a documentary piece about the female nurses or women nurses who served in Vietnam, whose stories were not accounted for. And they were interviewed and turned into a book and then turned into a play.
Larry Mayorquin give a voice to the voiceless. I love it. Like, that's what you're all about. It's so perfect. All right, here we go. What's a show you're currently watching?
A show I'm currently watching. I just finished Superstore, which I'm a retail worker, and that shit is hilarious.
All right. What are some of your biggest influences, or where are you finding your inspiration currently?
My biggest influences are, I'm gonna say, probably Jennifer Nocera, my high school teacher. I want to be an educator that has the ability to make an impact the way she has on me.
I love it. What artist or piece of art do you think is under the radar that people should know about?
I think Anna Devere Smith is not as popular now, and I think it would be dope for that to resurface, especially Twilight Los Angeles, super relevant.
I love that. And then another question is, what are the top 3 plays that everyone should read for you? You already said Twilight Los Angeles, but what are some pieces that you're like, these are things that are really important?
I love documentary theater, so I'm just going to plug those for anybody who hasn't gone into that. With Their Eyes, A View from Ground Zero is about Stuyvesant High School, who was a few blocks from 9/11 when the attack happened, and it's the story of their students. A Piece of My Heart, like I said, about the nurses in Vietnam, is a really awesome piece, especially if you want to produce a play with a strong female cast. That's a great play. And The Laramie Project, if you're not familiar with Matthew Shepard, the Shepard Foundation, and everything that has come from that play, I suggest you look into it.
When you are working hard and doing all these things, working at retail, writing plays, doing all these things, what's a thing that always keeps you going? Gives you that motivation to continue? Coffee?
The fear of failing and being nothing.
Yeah.
What keeps me going? I have 3 very awesome nephews and 1 new baby niece, and I would love to be the first in my family with a master's degree, and it's all for the lineage, man, all for the legacy.
And one final rapid fire question. What is the role that Larry Mayorquin wants to play as an actor more than any other role? Like the one that sits in your heart. You're like, I won before I die.
This is gonna sound weird, but Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
Okay, I love that. That's a great answer. Awesome. That was great. You've completed rapid fire. You did it.
You've done it. It's very successfully, by the way. You set the bar very high.
Probably the swiftest answers I've ever had on rapid fire. I was like, oh my God. Normally there's like this pause and this like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? That was brilliant. 10 out of 10, Larry Mayorquin.
I thought I had to be rapid as well.
Killed it. Listen, usually Rob's questions are like some very long philosophical question right after he says rapid fire. We won't get into it.
Yeah, well, Cam wrote them down for me this time, so I would go faster.
MVP.
Larry, before we let you go, where or what should we check out to see your projects or what you've got going on or what you want to plug?
Sure.
All the things.
You could follow us on Instagram at Teatro Liberado.
Can you spell that for me? We'll
Absolutely.
plug it as well. Put it out on our socials.
TeatroLiberado.
Awesome. Thank you.
And if you want to follow me, you can. It's at OrdinaryLarry_. My headshot will be waiting for you.
It's a glorious headshot. You will not be disappointed in that. Well, Larry, as always, thank you so much. I'm so glad we've got to work together and get to know each other. And I really appreciate you joining us on this podcast. I think the world of you. I think you're so talented. And I know that it won't be long until we're hearing about some of the pieces written by Larry Mayorquin out there on the main stage, on the Broadways, on the things, because you have an immense talent. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
This is the Play Upstream Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Play Upstream Podcast.
If you'd like to contribute, you can subscribe to patreon.com/playupstream or at PayPal at playupstream@gmail.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Play Upstream to keep up with all of our other exciting projects.
Enjoy yourself and support art.